Hi, and welcome to the podcast. Welcome to Kitchen Conversations. If you go online looking for coaching tips and tricks and advice, you are going to inevitably run into a gentleman named Kevin Beeson. Now, Kevin's someone that came from, and these are his words, they're not mine, from the dark side. Yeah, he was a tennis player. And the interesting story that he shares today, I won't let the cat totally out of the bag, but suffice to say, he said, I'll give it 10 minutes. Well, it's turned into a lifetime passion. You'll hear all about that and so much more on this episode. But Kevin has a really interesting, pragmatic way of breaking down coaching tips. We talk about a drill called up the river and down the river, and you're going to love that part of the conversation for sure. But we, interestingly enough, kicked it off by, I suppose, reluctantly perhaps, talking about our ages and how technology is moving so quickly and how it kind of melds into the world of podcasting and all of this technology and gear that's here in the studio. But that got us into fax machines, and Kevin reflecting on thinking that his beeper, and there's people right now going, beeper? I've never heard of a beeper. Well, he'll talk about his beeper and how he thought that would be all the technology that he would ever need. I hope you enjoyed this conversation with Kevin. It was just an incredible chat, and I thank Kevin so much for being part of the podcast today. I remember the very first facsimile machine that I ever laid eyes on, and I thought to myself, it can't get any better, Kevin. Like if we stick a piece of paper here in Oregon and it shows up in Ontario, Canada, like how does it get any better? So
No, it's crazy. And I mean, even, us being, well, I don't speak for myself, being a senior, and I remember I was one of those that was like when the iPhone came out or I was like, I'm never going to use this. I'm never going to, no, I've got my little beeper. I got my little pager.
right,
This
right.
works fine for me. Right.
Yeah.
And,
What more do I need? Yeah.
but yeah, I don't
Right.
need anything more than that. I mean, that's
Yeah.
perfect. And then, and even today, when I ask my son, a simple question, what I don't think is simple on the iPhone, and he's 26 years old, and he'll say, "Oh my gosh!" And then I took him to a thrift shop, an antique store, and I showed him the old dial phone, the dial up, and I said, "Okay, dial a number for me." And he just looked at that thing, and so he dialed the number. But I said, "You forgot to do one thing." He said, "What?" I said, "You didn't even pick up the
You got to start by
that
getting a dial tone.
that that was so much work back then, It's
Well,
like,
Kevin, welcome to my podcast. Welcome to Kitchen Conversations. And I can't begin to tell you just how thrilled I am to finally connect with you, at least somewhat face to face here today. We have been talking to one another back and forth with text and messages and emails and trying to line up a date and a time for us to sit down together and talk about this amazing game of pickleball that we both love so much. So let me start by thanking you for finding some time to be here today.
well, thank you very much. I feel honored to be as you kick off your kitchen conversations. Thank you very much for reaching out.
Wow, you're welcome. I'm so happy to have you here today. And I've got so much I could cover with you, Kevin. This is one of these conversations that I think could go all day. But I will be mindful of the clock and I'm keeping an eye on it. So we'll do our best to make sure we stay within some kind of a reasonable time frame here today. But I'm hoping we could kind of have a conversation, Kevin, based on three rallies to keep it, if you will, in the spirit of the game of pickleball. We all love long rallies. And I'd like to start rally one with asking you to tell us a little bit about your background, the sports that you've played in the past. I know you've got some tennis background, you've got some, coaching and communication background. And so I'd love for you to kind of run with that initially. And then rally two, I want to jump into this incredible game that started way back in 1965 on Bainbridge Island with those wonderful people and Barney McCallum and his group. And we're so thankful that they did that. And we're kind of thankful for the kids for driving them crazy that day. And that ultimately led to the invention of the game. So small steps in that. So rally two, we'll spend some time talking about pickleball. And then rally three, which I hope, Kevin, is ultimately our longest rally together, is where we talk a lot about what you're doing online, your coaching, your camps, your clinics, your traveling. You just are doing such an incredible job with all of that. And I really want to spend some time talking to you about that. So if that makes sense, I'd love to start today's conversation with you by inviting you to tell us a bit about your background and perhaps, where tennis fit in and some of the other sports that you may have played. So if you don't mind, why don't you run with that for me?
Well, okay, started in the tennis. I started on the dark side. Okay, so I started in the tennis world, and I grew up in Minnesota, and um, I got involved. We had moved to a new place, and there was a tennis court right across the street, and there was a gentleman playing who asked me to come play. And I was one of those young kids that played baseball, football, and hockey, and all those things. And I just started in the tennis at a really early age and continued to play tennis and really loved the game and played, through high school, a little bit in college, and then tried to play on the pro tour until I ran out of money, which didn't take long. Okay. Uh, it's pretty darn tough.
Yeah.
But it's when I went from into to tennis, when I ran out of money, what do tennis pros do? They fall back to what they know, and that is teaching. So I got into the teaching part of tennis. Why, as my parents would say, looking for a real job. Okay, but I really really enjoyed it, and so I just really got hooked, and I did that for, oh my gosh, I've been coaching since 1985. Yeah, so for a long time. So it's, yeah, 30 plus years. Okay. And so I got into the tennis business, and then I did that for so many years. And then about 8 years ago, I I got like pickleball. Oh, it's
Uh-huh.
all we heard about: pickleball, pickleball, pickleball. And I never had any desire to play, like zero. It was in my DNA. I was a tennis pro.
Right.
We there was
Right.
there was nothing about pickleball that interests me at all. Like zero.
Yeah.
I mean, you used a little kid's wiffle ball with an oversized ping pong paddle on a small court, and everybody was old.
Right.
Okay. And so I know what you're thinking. Okay, I was in denial.
Right. Yep.
Yeah. So I got invited to play pickleball, but I only committed to 10 minutes. I said, I will give you 10 minutes of my time, and you can't tell anybody.
That's a
Okay.
secret. It's our
No,
secret.
it's a secret. It's
Right.
a secret. Okay. Well, 10
Yeah.
minutes turned into 45 minutes.
Ah,
And I had to leave. I had to go teach a tennis lesson. And it was the first tennis lesson that I had ever taught where I was trying to teach the player how to dink,
wow.
right? And that 10 minutes or that
Okay.
45 minutes
Yeah.
changed my life as
Wow.
I know it today. I mean, I believe pickleball is just as you feel also
Yes.
is the greatest game. And the
Absolutely.
only regret I'm ever gonna have is I wish I would have started a long time ago.
Yeah. Kevin, I don't think there's many of us in the age bracket, I'm 59, that wouldn't echo that exactly. Is there a regret about the game? Yes. What is it? I didn't start earlier. I didn't start sooner. I didn't pay attention. I judged it, from the sidelines. I didn't give it a fair chance. I mean, all of those conversations are happening all over the courts, all over North America today. So many people wishing that they
Right,
had picked up that paddle because many of us had a chance to do that. And that was my story. I did have a chance to pick up this game probably a decade ago. And I just started about 3 years ago, Kevin. So I lost out on about 7 years of enjoying this game, learning the game. And so I don't think what you and I are talking about in this moment and those listening to the podcast, I think there's a lot of people shaking their head going, absolutely, putting their hand up
oh,
saying,
I
yeah, that was me. Yeah.
I agree. I 100% agree. The number of tennis players that I've worked with in the past who swore they would never ever play pickleball, right, are now some of my students, or or even my partners, right? Some of the people said, "No, I'm never going to play that game." Yeah, well, there they are.
Yeah. And it's a magic. I call it, sorry, Kevin, I call it the magic moment. And you experienced that because you were willing to give 10 minutes, under almost under cover of darkness, I can't, nobody can catch me doing this, and 10 minutes turned into 45, which I love. It's a great story. And thanks for sharing that. I just love that story. But what happens in that moment, Kevin, from your professional and personal opinion? What is it? Is there something between the ball and the paddle connecting that triggers something in our head, the instant addiction? I've yet to figure it out, but I know it happens, and it happens, in a nanosecond almost, just a couple of minutes, and you're starting to smile and fall in love with this game.
Well, you said it. You're smiling. You're laughing. Okay, you're having fun. And the thing about pickleball is that I kind of break it down into ages. So as you get older, right, your career of whatever your sports background was. So when I first came over to pickleball, people would say, "Well, isn't that going to ruin your tennis game?" I was like, "I'm 50 some years old. What tennis game?" That was that was 30 years ago, right? That was a long time ago, right? And then there is the part for the players who um, the game in general is it's an easier game to pick up, right? It's easier to learn to play pickleball than it is golf or tennis or something like that. So right away you have this immediate success, right? You don't even need to know how to keep score to be able to play pickleball. We see that all the time. People are out there jumping on the courts playing. They don't know the score, they don't know the rules, but you know what? They're smiling and they're laughing. And I think that's the one thing that makes this game so darn addictive. It's
Yeah, you've hit the nail on the head. I talked to a buddy of mine who we play together periodically just yesterday, actually, Kevin. He said he does a bit of coaching up here as well in Ontario, Canada. And he said he loves to teach hit and giggle. That's what he calls it, hit and giggle. He said,
yeah.
if you want to go out and your game is hit and giggle with a bunch of friends, play for a couple hours, go out for a beer, a glass of wine, or bite to eat, or whatever the plan may be, he said, I'm good with that. And I think the magic of the game, at least a part of it, to your point, and I'm glad you went there, is the fact that you can do just that. You can step into the game, learn kind of how to play in a matter of, half an hour maybe. And it doesn't matter. If you want to stay there for the rest of your life and just hit the wiffle ball, do it. If you want to take pro coaching, you want to get better, you want to grow, then that's there too. So yeah, that's all great stuff. I love your insight into that, Kevin. Thanks for sharing that. Yeah, appreciate it.
So
Take me back just for a minute. Let me draw you back to that moment, those 10 minutes when you were still in the tennis mode, you were fighting it. Why do you think that is? Is it just that we're a little reluctant to admit that maybe we can't handle the real estate of the tennis court anymore? As a lot of tennis players, you mentioned the dark side, but I think it's shifting, and that's a good thing. I think pickleball's, image, if you will, with a lot of tennis players is starting to be maybe something I'm going to be able to do and enjoy down the road. And that's great for the game. But what 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 was it in that moment that you were fighting, thinking
well,
about pickleball?
I I really think there was that, and we still hear it some. But I
Yeah,
believe that pickleball and tennis are really they're great for each other. They can feed off
right.
each other.
Yeah.
I think there's parts of pickleball that can improve your tennis game and parts of tennis that can improve your pickleball game. Okay. What really, really turned me on to it was at 50 some years old. I was like 57, 56, somewhere
Yeah.
in that age, right? Okay. When I started was I had gotten to a certain point in my age where I was really looking to learn something new.
Ah,
Okay.
okay.
And so I literally took guitar lessons at a late age. Okay.
Wow.
I tried to figure out how to play the piano at a later age. But the problem was I didn't even own a piano,
Okay.
which was an issue.
That's a
So
challenge.
I
Yeah.
really wanted to learn something else because again in the tennis my tennis game I wasn't improving. I was declining with age, and that just
Right.
happens.
Mhm.
Pickleball was the one thing that I could do where I didn't know enough about the game that I could actually learn something new at a later age and actually potentially, hopefully, get better at it. And
Yes.
I think that's really what hooked me into it
Mm.
was that. hey, now I have something I can strive for. And
I love it.
that's, yeah, that's pretty much
Yeah,
how
it's
I got hooked.
Yeah, it's great, and I've kind of heard a similar conversation, in the past with a number of different people as well, Kevin, and, I agree 100% with that, and, it is something that you can sort of segue into from either, squash or badminton or tennis, and I don't think it hurts you to have some of that, racket experience. I do think that does give you a slight edge, heading into pickleball for sure. I came from a golf background, so everything I do is forced. And you would know that.
Yeah.
If you were to coach me today, you go, "Ooh, boy, this guy hasn't got a lot of racket experience, but he's trying." He's really, I would get the award for the most passionate player on the court maybe that day. But I do see when I step on a court, someone that's played table tennis for a while, or some badminton. You sort of get a sense that there's definitely some experience there. It's coming into play in the pickleball game immediately almost for them. So yeah, interesting. I talked to Patty Hunter Murphy. We mentioned him off camera
Hmm.
just before we started recording, who runs, of course, the Senior Pickleball Tips Facebook group, which is an enormous community and an engaged community, and he's doing a lot of good for the sport. But his thoughts on this, when I asked him, Kevin, he talked about the length of the game compared to, say, a tennis match, because he was a 50-year tennis player as well. And he said the fact that in a social setting where you're just doing a paddle rotation, a Tuesday morning, you're kind of in a game and out of a game with, three other people for maybe 15 or 18 minutes. Then you're on the sidelines, you're chatting with some people, you're jumping back into another game, you're back out again. And he really gave a lot of credit to the length of the game, to get to 11 as part of the magic. And, I'm wondering what your thoughts on that might be.
I think that's definitely true, Pat. And number one, Patty is a great guy. What he's done for pickleball is absolutely amazing. Had great conversations with Patty. Um, Super guy. But I think he's right. Okay, is that the length of the game definitely helps when you know, if you're going to go out there and you're going to learn something new and you're out there, 2.5 hours and you're grinding in the heat and whatever, that might not be a real big turn on to somebody. But if you can just go out there and play for, 15, 18 minutes, whatever it might be, I think that could be a big part of it. Is it's shorter and you do get to go and socialize afterwards. Now, what I didn't understand about pickleball when I first started was I started playing some tournaments and everyone said you needed a cooler and a lawn chair. Okay, because you needed to when I started playing tournaments, I didn't get it because there wasn't like, okay, you're going to play at 9 o'clock and then you're going to play at 10:30 and then you're going to play. It was just one after another. So at first I went without the lawn chair and the cooler, and I figured it out pretty quickly because you need something to sit on when you're over there socializing, and you might want to have a, refreshment or a power bar or something like that. The problem was, though, I went through a lot of coolers and a lot of lawn chairs. Okay.
Did you?
Because,
Okay.
oh, yeah, because especially if the tournament didn't go well and I would,
Uh-oh.
oh man, I'm getting out of here. I lost, whatever. Right. Okay. And then I'd be driving home and I'd be like, where's my lawn chair? Where's my cooler? Right. And then now I got to go either back to get it or, stop by and buy another lawn chair and another cooler. I didn't get that part, but I learned quickly. Yeah.
Well, somebody said, "Oh, Kevin was here. He's donated another cooler and another lawn chair." That's great. Yeah, it's your charitable donation work. There you go. Yeah, you should have started a foundation maybe, lawn
I
chairs and coolers. I mean, there might have been something there. Well, that's all terrific. What a great start to the conversation to get a sense of kind of how you got into the game and a bit of your sports background and that tennis. And I really appreciate you sharing that. So thank you.
Thank you.
Let's jump into Rally 2. And that's kind of where is the game today for you, Kevin? And we're going to park the coaching conversation because that's the biggest part of us getting together and talking about all of that this afternoon. But let's talk about you as a player today. What have you accomplished that you're most proud of in the game? And kind of where does it fit into your life today? You're so busy. I can't imagine you have a lot of time between all the coaching and training and the work that you're doing to help the pickleball, the broader pickleball community. Do you get much time to play? Are you still doing some tournaments? Where is all of that in your world today?
So I just recently jumped back into the tournament world within the last year. And so I've been competing on the APP Masters Senior Pro Tour, which has been great. When I first started, okay, I really jumped into playing. I actually never thought I would be coaching pickleball. That wasn't the reason I jumped into it. I jumped into it to compete because like so many of us, I still like to compete even at we'll say an older age. Okay. And so I went all in. I started, I trained all the time. I played tournaments all over the country. I played nationals and things like that. Was fortunate enough to win a few national titles. And then COVID hit. Okay. And I started thinking to myself, do I want to be remembered as an old senior pro player that no one's going to remember? Or do I want my legacy to be able to be in the teaching, right? To go to the teaching side where I can, share some of this game that I've learned, or even share life lessons with people, especially younger players, get to share some life lessons with them. Um, so when COVID hit, I decided I was really going to focus on the teaching. So for 5 years, I didn't really play up until the last year. I actually just traveled the world doing camps, and which was great. But just recently, in the last year, I figured, there's
Right.
going to come a time where I can't run anymore. Okay.
Right.
And
Yeah.
I still work out, I still do all that stuff. And as long as I can still run, I should get out there and try to compete a little bit. And it's been great. It's been super fun. And they're really good. I mean, those masters, that's 60 and over, they're really good. I wasn't expecting that, Mike. I really thought I'm gonna go out there and clean up. No, they're really
Sure.
good.
I've got my hands full now. This is not what I
Yeah,
signed up for. Yeah.
exactly.
But isn't that again, Kevin, to just to idle on that point for a moment with you, isn't that another reason why you and I and so many others love this game? The ability to take it forward into your, I'll be careful here, into our senior years. But if we look after ourselves, we work out a little, we eat well, and we, prioritize sleep, and if we do a lot of the back end work well, then we can take that onto the court tomorrow and the next day and next week, and we can play this game at a relatively competitive level for, many, many years. And I think that's another aspect, another element, if you will, of pickleball that's so appealing.
It is. You're so true.
Yeah,
It's a game of a lifetime. It
absolutely.
is.
Yeah.
It's a game of a lifetime. At one of my camps, the oldest student I've ever had,
Okay.
101.
Stop.
101.
101.
101, and he was the best dressed guy there. He matched from head to toe, right? He looked great, and he did great. He did. Yeah, so it is a game of a lifetime, and
Well, Kevin, not many can say they coached a centurion. I mean,
right.
really, that's a moment. There should be some kind of an award, a plaque. There should be something to recognize that. What a moment, though. And he must have been a real fire plug, a real spark, I would imagine.
Oh, he was. He truly was. He had the best one-liners. I mean, the guy was just he was a stand-up comedian, right? And he knew his limits, right? He knew his limits. And yeah, just to say that I coached someone 101 years old is absolutely just okay, just for them to be out there. I mean, I'm just hoping that every day I'm thankful. Every day I'm thankful that I get to go out and, teach and compete and make videos and all these things. I'm just thankful that I still get to do that. It's awesome.
Oh, it's just terrific. Good. Well, I'm so glad to hear you're back in and playing. So give me a sense of your schedule then for 2026. Have you sort of set it up to say, a minimum of X number of tournaments, or are you just kind of managing that schedule, Kevin, on day by day, week by week basis at this point?
So I will play in what I really like about the
Yeah.
APP is that it's tied in with the Humana Cup. And the Humana
Right.
Cup is for seniors. So it's a team competition where you're drafted to a team, and we in the Masters there's five tournaments that we play. So we play Cincinnati, New York, Detroit, Chicago. And
Okay.
so it's about one a month for that. So I'll definitely play those. Um, and then I will play some local tournaments. I'll probably play 12 tournaments this year, I would guess, maybe give or take. But
Yeah.
the APP ones with the Humana Cup, I'll definitely play.
That's awesome. Well, that
Well,
sounds great.
it's so great because you're on a team sport again with
Right.
a bunch of people that are all in the same age division with the same
Yeah.
stories we can talk about. Hey, remember back 20, 30, 40 years ago, right?
Yeah.
It's great.
It's so much of it, Kevin. That whole aspect of the game, that social element of it, however you want to define that, and we all find it. And I don't think we necessarily, as non-players, those listening today, and that is, by the way, the whole goal of this podcast is each episode inspires just one person to pick up a paddle and try this game for the very first time. That's what I'm hoping to accomplish. So the day I get a comment saying, "Hey, I heard that terrific interview with Kevin and you, and Kevin was great. You weren't so great, but he was great. But Mike, I did it. I picked up a paddle. I went out to my local club or my local court, and I tried the game. And you know what, Kevin and you were right, both of you. I fell in love with it. So, I think the social side is something that you can't really explain to people. You can kind of explain the game that it's a paddle and a ball, and you hit it over the net. The score goes to 11. It's confusing, and you'll figure it out. But it's really hard to express that core, that social core that is such an important part of this game. Would you not agree with that?
Oh, I totally
Yeah.
agree. I totally agree.
Yeah.
And I think that players that first come over to the game. So, funny story is the first tournament I ever played in was run by a good friend of mine, Mike Hoxie, who is pretty darn well known out there in the pickleball world, runs pickleball is great tournaments. But the first tournament I played in, I showed up to the tournament desk and he was sitting there. And they had a band playing right next to the courts. They had a live band playing. And I looked at him coming from the tennis world and being a competitive tennis player. I looked at him and said, "Is that band going to be playing when I'm playing?" And he looked up at me and he said, "Do you have a problem with that?" And I said, "No." And then I'm good. Yeah, no, I guess not. Wouldn't you know it? He put me right next to the court where the live band was playing, and I was not happy about it. And but about the third song in, they started playing a Jimmy Buffett song. And
Okay.
you know what? I found that I was singing along as I was playing. And I was like hitting giggles. I was like, okay, wait a minute. This is so much fun. And look at all the chords of all these people playing and look at the smiles. They're smiling, they're laughing. What are they smiling about? What are they laughing about? Right? And it's like all of a sudden I was so wrapped up in the whole thing of the music and the people. And it was great.
I love
Love
it.
it.
What a great story. Thanks for sharing that. Because somebody had said to me a couple weeks ago, Kevin, you walk by a pickleball club and it's almost like a comedy club. Sometimes the laughing and the carrying on. And what I love about it is being at a club with, say, 10 or 12 indoor courts. And you can have, a hit and giggle group in the far corner having the time of their life. You can have a somewhat, a social game going on 2 or 3 courts. You could have a somewhat competitive game happening, on another court, and then maybe a few people off to the side drilling and working with a coach. And you just, if you're able to step back and recognize just the layers of this game that you can encounter on a Tuesday morning anywhere in North America, it's pretty interesting. And all of that you've just said is a part of it, getting out, having fun, socializing, making friends. And a lot of these social games, Kevin, as you're well aware, they lead to long-term lifetime friendships. They really do. You'll meet somebody on a Tuesday you've never met, and by Wednesday you're best friends. Like it's almost like, hey, I met yesterday and we're friends, we're best friends tomorrow because we have this common love interest in this game of pickleball. So yeah, good for you. Well, good luck with all of the tournament play this year. I'm glad to hear you're back into it.
Thank you.
And yeah, I wish you all the luck with that. It's terrific. Well,
Thank
listen,
you.
let's get into Rally 3. I really want you to run with all of this. And I want you to help me understand a couple of things because I'm a little bit confused. And number one is, I don't think you can possibly sleep with all the content that you're putting out. So I want to know your secret to that. If you figured out how to sleep while standing straight up, I'd like to learn that. I know the amount of work it's taken me since January to put this little studio together, to try to record a few podcasts, to go through the editing, to get them out there, hopefully with something intelligent to say, a little bit entertaining, and hopefully, again, as I said a moment ago, to inspire someone to try this game for the very first time. So when I pick up my phone, when I grab my iPhone, when I go to my iPad, the first person I see is Kevin Beeson, smiling away, giving me the most practical, pragmatic tips that I've ever heard in my life, and I love it. I love all of it, and I'm consuming as much of your content as I can, but I'd love for you to explain to me, how much time are you putting into this? Because it is, I mean, congratulations on all of it, but I don't know how you're doing it. I really don't.
Well, sleep is overrated. You know that. Okay. All right. So I made a goal at the beginning of the year to put out new pickleball content every day for 2026. Okay. Now we're only into April. Okay. And so it's gonna be challenging, but it's you know what it is? It's for the love of the game. Okay. My time here, our time is limited. Okay. If my goal is to touch as many people as possible, as many people as I could get to one person to pick up that paddle and get out there and play, or maybe one thing that I said, right, really help them, right? And just going out there and sharing. There's no reason not to share. I mean, I'm blessed to have been able to play this game as long as I have, okay, which isn't that long, okay? And I plan on playing a lot longer. But in the meantime, is to be able to share and to be able to, spread the word about this great game of pickleball. It's it's not easy, but you know, it's fun. It's great. I absolutely look forward to it. I love it. There's, as you know, you started a podcast. There's a lot more to it than just going out and putting out a video. You have to set it up, you have to film it, you got to find the court, you have to edit it. You have all those things. But you know what? When I'm at a tournament and somebody comes up to me and says, "Hey, I watch your content. Thank you very much." That's that makes my day. That's right there. I mean, that's why I'm doing it. You know, it's funny. It's craziest thing is it's happened a couple times. I was in Denver in the airport, and a guy came up to me and he said, "You're the YouTuber." And I'm like, "I'm the YouTuber? Wow. Not now, yeah, I'm the YouTuber now, right? And and can I have your autograph?" And I'm like, crazy. I'm like, wow, this is really, but that's not why I do it though. I mean, it's just those people that they say thank you, and it's my privilege to be able to put content out there that you watch and other players and hopefully other people watch, and they learn something from it.
Well, Kevin, you're doing such a job, and I want to jump into that in just a minute because I've got some questions specific to all of that. But I want to draw us back to again, we had a little bit of an off-camera conversation
Hmm.
prior to starting today, and the name Steve Peranto came up, and he's a good buddy
Yes.
of yours. You guys are
Yep.
friends. You were just recently at the Peranto Playhouse, and let me tell
Yeah.
you, I'm envious of that. That's boy, that's like the mecca. That's like going to Disneyland for pickleball players. Is Peranto's Playhouse? So good on you for being there, and I'm sure you've been there a number of times, but there's a guy that when I had a chance to talk to him, and I was so blessed, a friend of a friend of a friend connected me with Steve. And so we had a chance to chat. And, there's a guy who obviously the history with he and his dad and the development of that paddle in 1984 and him playing in that first bicentennial tournament in 1976. And, but I got a sense in talking to him as I am with you today. And I love this about both of you is you have this sense of responsibility, Kevin, for whatever reason, to pay it forward, to do the work that Barney McCallum and his group started, in 1965. And that's where I feel I'm finally kind of getting it after a couple years in the game I don't know why it's happened. I can't tell you what made me wake up in January of 2026 and say I'm going to start a podcast about the stories behind the paddle, but my hope is to contribute in some small way to exactly what you're saying, to get people involved. And I really got that sense from Steve, and I'm sure that you would echo that. He and the other Hall of Famers that are out there, and of course he was inducted in 2019, and they just seem to have this ongoing sense of responsibility to promote the game and to advocate for the game. And it's so nice to see you echoing that exact thought and feeling today. So thank you. It's terrific.
Well, you're so welcome. And then, and Mike, put it on your bucket list. You have to go to Parento's Playhouse. It is more than just two pickleball courts. It's a museum. It's an actual museum. You can just get caught up for hours looking at all the pictures, and to sit with Steve and to go talk with him. I could talk with him for hours about the history of the game of pickleball and where he thinks the game's going, and so on.
When I listen to your content and I take in as much as I can, I just love the way you're able to simplify it for me. I want to talk about, and one in particular, and I had it in mind coming into the call today. I watched something recently about a warm up drill, up the river and down the river. And
Right,
it just rang my bell. Like it just made sense because when I'm out at my local club on a Tuesday playing with the guys, there are a bunch of us trying to warm up, but we really don't know what we're doing.
right.
We're starting off with some, direct dinking, cross court dinking. Somebody will back up. We'll start to try to hit some third shot drops. We'll work our way up to the kitchen, maybe get some fast hands going. But the concept of up the river, down the river, and having a system made a lot of sense. So was that something that you were teaching as a tennis coach that you kind of brought into pickleball, breaking down what could be a complex training session and trying to make it simple? Is that sort of how you got to where you are? Because I just love your content. I think it's terrific.
Well, it comes down to it's when players go out, you go out there, right? And you go out there and you're playing and you're warming up. What you think is warming up, okay? So the typical warm up for the pickleball player is driving through Starbucks. Okay, that's the typical warm up. Okay, but so they dink a few up at the kitchen, right? And then they run all the way back and they say, okay, give me a couple drops. And okay, now they're ready. But they didn't hit any balls in the transition zone, right? They didn't hit any balls. What I think is the most important spot on the whole court is that opportunity land, or some people call it senior citizens land or no man's land, is in between
Okay.
the baseline and the kitchen. And they skip that whole area. Okay. And that's you can't get from the baseline to the kitchen without going through the transition zone. So
Right.
when you are out there warming up, because we don't like to warm up that long, this way you get to hit a ball in each
Right.
spot on the court. Okay. So that's more of a it's a short warm up because your goal is to use like one ball. So if you and I are going to go
Yeah.
out, we're going to go start with two dinks at the kitchen. You take two steps
Yeah.
back. You're going to hit two drops, two steps back, two drops. And we're going to try to do one ball where you go all the way back. I'm up at the kitchen and then you come all the way in. Then I go back. And now
Yes.
that took us a big whopping, 45 seconds to do if we can keep one ball going, right? And we're working on that consistency and control, which is so important in pickleball.
Yeah, 100%. So it's intentional then. I mean, you're taking something and simplifying it. I mean, there's a purpose behind the way that you're presenting. So when I'm watching your videos, Kevin, and I encourage everyone who's listening to this today, if you haven't
Yeah.
been there yet, get there. You just got to put it in, go to the Google and type in Kevin Beeson and, you'll be amazed. But there must be a lot of intent, when you're planning those videos and you're thinking about them, taking that concept of what am I trying to teach here and how do I make it into something that's memorable and simple yet effective. And I think that's the trick, Kevin, in being a great coach. I think being able, a lot of people can play the game well, and it's a question I'd like to come back to in a minute on, but being able to play the game well and being able to teach it well, those two don't always sync up. They don't necessarily run in parallel one to another. So you must put a lot of thought into breaking down those lessons.
Well, I do because it's I go with the old KISS system. keep it simple, student. Okay, is because it's pickleball, right? We don't. It's an easy game that we make difficult. So I'm trying to reach that player. If it is the beginner player who's just starting, or the more advanced player, or the senior player. So everything has a plan and a purpose, right? And so, and then the most you'll hear a lot in my videos is the word patience. That's the one thing. But they're all about keeping it simple, because like I said, it's this is an easy game that we're making difficult.
Mm. And there's no reason. Just simplify it. Well, I love all that. Tell me about your zero to hero sort of slogan. Where did that start and how does it play into your coaching?
Well, zero to hero, I started when I years ago, like 7 years ago. Okay. And I started thinking about, from my all my years of teaching, we all start at the same level. We all start at zero. So the first time you stepped on a court, you were at zero. I was at zero. Okay. And our goal is to, for most players, is to get as good as they possibly can. Right now, that's going to be different levels. Okay. So for you, that might be a 4.0. That's okay. And for some players, that might be, oh, I want to be a pro. Okay. So a lot of these, if you start at zero, we all start at zero, right? And we're going to reach our goal. That's our goal. There is that's it gives them something to strive for. But the thing about the hero part is it's not the same for everyone, because some of the people that I work with, some of the people that you meet out on the courts, this is the first sport they ever played. This is their US Open. This is their Wimbledon, right? And they may only get to, let's say, a 3.5, right? But they started at, you know, just right, right at the very beginning. So it was more telling people that it's all about where you can reach your potential, and your potential is going to be different for everybody.
I love it. Yeah, that's a great way of looking at it. Yeah, and again, we touched on it briefly, but the beauty of the game is coming into it at 0, let's say, and then finding your path, Kevin. There's no prescription that you must follow. You can decide I'm going to just plug into this game here, and that's kind of where I want to stay. I want to be competitive, but I don't want to play tournaments and I don't, but at the same time, the opportunities to take this game to whatever level you'd like to, including, turning pro, it's all out there. And I think, that's the beauty of it as well. There's just so many components to the game that make it what it is today. And the ability for each of those levels to enjoy it uniquely in their own unique way. But at the same time, there's a universal love for the game that just kind of develops within all of those little segments. So it's all great stuff. Well, listen, I'm careful with the clock, as I promised I would be. So I don't want to hold you too much longer, but give me a sense of your thoughts, Kevin, on a player coming into the game today. They're going to get lots of advice and it's unavoidable. And, like, sir, return, run to the kitchen, that
Right,
run,
right.
run right through the transition zone. Just ignore it. It's not there. Just get yourself up to the kitchen and go. How important, would it be in your mind for every player beginning this game? And again, we're talking to those today that may not have tried pickleball, to get into the game. Absolutely try it, get a few rallies in, go try it. But, to hire a coach, to work with a coach at least once, to get some foundation to the game. Where do you weigh in on that? And sort of what's your dialogue on that when you start thinking about it?
Well, first of all, the one thing that you're going to find at every open play, okay, there's one thing in common. There are 40 retired attorneys giving you free advice. Okay. Right. There's nothing you can do about it. Right. It's just like they're going to be there giving you and they mean well. They mean well. Right. Okay. It doesn't mean that what they're saying is right or wrong. Okay. But I feel that if you get some basic coaching, you get the fundamentals, the sky is the limit. If you have the basic fundamentals, the sky is the limit.
Yeah.
If you're unorthodox. Let's say you're an unorthodox player. You haven't taken any lessons. You don't know the
Mhm.
correct way to hit a drop or whatever it might be. You're going
Sure.
to reach a plateau. Okay.
Mhm.
And once you reach that plateau, right, you're
Yes.
now going to get frustrated. Okay.
Yep.
And now you've been playing for 2 years, you've reached that plateau, and now you're going to reach out to your local pro and ask
Yeah.
them. And this is going to take us
Right.
longer because now you've been playing for a couple of years and you have these,
Right.
maybe people call them bad habits or whatever,
Yeah.
right? And so now we're going to have to break you down and rebuild you, right?
Yeah.
So I think when you first start, I would highly recommend learning the
Good.
basics.
Yeah.
I'm a golfer, and I am a bad golfer. Okay, but I'm a bad. Okay, all right. I but I never took a lesson. I never took a lesson, and I wish I would have. I love the game, but I wish I would have when I first started, right? Because it would have taken a lesson. So I think it's incredibly valuable to go out there and find a player, a person, a pro, we'll call them, that is certified and knows, what them. We don't want anyone getting hurt either. And in some of the advice that people are giving out there trying to be helpful, you need to look at the level of the player, their athletic ability. Could they even do that? What you're trying to tell them to do, right? So I think it's very beneficial to start with the fundamentals.
I love that, Kevin. Thank you for all of that. It's great insight. I think your golf analogy is terrific. I fall into that. You and I could be golf buddies because I played the game most of my adult life terribly, terribly bad at it, but didn't take a lesson. My father-in-law handed me a set of old Blade Spaldings. That's a great set to learn on
Oh,
blades.
wow.
Yeah, handed me some Blade Spaldings and said, "Go get him, kid." And
Uh,
the first swing almost took his head off. He was standing a little ahead of the tee blocks. He didn't make that mistake again for 30 years, but he did that day. But I never took a lesson, so I developed. I took a little bit of pond hockey experience and transferred it into a golf club, and it's not pretty. I mean, it makes Jim Furyk's swing look like like a velvet swing. It's yeah. So I echo that. The other very quick point on this before we wrap up, Kevin, is I think the moment when a group of beginners, if you will, because let's be honest, most beginners getting out there, it's serve, return, and then maybe a third, maybe a fourth, but the rallies don't go much longer than 2 or 3 taps on the paddle. And I love it when there's an accidental reset. And I call it that because they didn't intend to reset it. They got into a little bit of a firefight and then somebody made a mistake. And all of a sudden we're dealing with a reset and they go, "Oh, wow. Hey, this is fun." And then that
yeah,
might actually lead to a little bit of accidental dinking. And then that might lead to a rally of 8, 10, 12 points. And I can tell you, I almost remember, Kevin, to the day the first time I had an accidental reset. I went to hit it
yeah,
and I missed it and it reset. And all of a sudden we slowed it down again because it's that serve, return. And then sure enough, at that level, that beginner level, all of a sudden everybody's trying to get the kill shot in. It's a moment. And I think people would enjoy the game in the way that it was designed to be played if they would take that coaching to learn how to get the reset intentional, not by accident. Because I think
right.
that's the greatest moment in pickleball, in my opinion. I love it when it's serve, return, a nice third shot drop. We get a little dinking. Somebody thinks they've got a shot. They try to, and all of a sudden you're into 15, 18, 20, 22 rallies at a social competitive level. And when you're able to slow that down, and you mentioned that the importance of that transition real estate in the middle, be able to do that, the game becomes, it almost just peels back a whole nother layer of it. What do you have your eye on with respect to the future of the game, Kevin? You are so immersed in this, and your opinion on this would be very valuable. Tell me, is there something about the game that concerns you? Is it, I mean, paddle technology obviously is at the forefront of so many conversations today. The speed of the ball, eye safety, younger players coming into the game, changing the game in a way that might be good for the game. I'm not saying it's not, but I think we would probably both agree as the demographics drop, the speed of the game, all of that starts to change. Is there something from your perspective, both as a coach, a player, and I guess an advocate for the game that you're thinking about today that concerns you a bit?
Well, the game's changed. The game's changed drastically since I started. Okay. My concern is, I mean, with today's game, with today's technology and the power that the ball can leave the paddle today, we see a much more powerful game than we used to see, right? That's not for everybody. That's not for everyone. The game is, I'm a big believer, everybody wear some sort of eye protection when you're playing because the game is so fast today. Um, my concern is that the game is going to get so fast that it's not going to be an enjoyable spectator sport, okay, because
Ah,
of the
right.
and the pace of the game. And when you've been out there, okay, and pickleball is the only sport where you could have this dinking rally going back and forth, and the people watching are going nuts. They're like, "Oh my gosh, this is the most amazing point ever!" Right? Okay, and if you to experience that is just it's great. I mean, the average number of shots for the recreational player per point is four.
Okay, good.
It's
Yeah.
four.
So
The
that's kind of
average
where I,
number,
yeah.
yeah, the average number of shots for the pros in doubles is, if you watch, is anywhere. It used to be 20 to 30. Now it's 10 to 20. But that's still a much bigger number. And if you get out there and you get into this thinking battle back and forth, right? Pickleball, what I love about pickleball is every time the ball comes back, it's like every time they return the problem to you, which is the ball, okay, is the point starts over. But like I said earlier about patience, we get impatient. The balls come back 4, 5, 6, 7 times, and you feel like you need to do something tricky, right? And yeah, and tricks are for kids. Tricks are for kids, right? Okay. Don't get bored with success. Okay. Right. So just return that problem. But and I also think in the pickleball world, what we're going to see more of, and it's coming out more and more, is my biggest concern is I'm going to lose my job to AI. To AI. There's now all these there's all sorts of apps out there now where you can video yourself and you can see, and it's going to tell you what you're doing wrong and all this stuff. And it's like, wait a minute, how about me? How about me? Right? Okay. You're going to lose that personal touch and the whole thing. Um, I think the game is just not to take away from the game. I mean, I think there's different levels. Like you say, there's levels. The players that we're watching on TV are world class athletes,
Yes.
right? Okay. Just because Mario Andretti can drive his car 200 miles an hour doesn't mean I get to drive my car 200 miles an hour, right? And then I love what is the greatest job security for me? YouTube. It's the greatest job security for me because, and what do I mean by that is you go out and you watch all these YouTube videos by all these people out there that are putting out pickleball content, and some of it's really good. Okay. But then you watch this video and you come in and you come to see me, right? And all of a sudden you're trying to hit this Ernie or this jumping 4 feet in the air at 60 years old. I'm like, what are you doing? Well, I saw Ben Johns do this,
Uh-huh.
and I'm like, oh, so I look at it, and it's like, I think with today's game is, I can't say it enough, is patience.
Hmm.
Is the longer points are so much fun,
They are.
you know.
They are. Yeah. I just think so many people don't get there, Kevin, because, they just don't either want to put the time in to get there, or they're quite happy where they are with those 4 point rallies. But let me tell you, it's like tasting chocolate for the first time. You're like, I like this. And
Oh yeah.
I would like more chocolate, because when you get into those rallies that are longer and the patience starts to play into that, as you've said, it becomes a totally different game. And I just think it opens up a whole new world for those of us that haven't experienced it. So, well, listen, this has been beyond amazing, and I could talk to you all day.
Thank you.
I appreciate everything you're doing to help the game. I respect everything you're putting out there. I admire how much time you're putting into this, and I get a small sense through my little podcast about just how hard you're working. So I want to, pat you on the back for that and just tell you, good on you and thank you for doing this. It's amazing, Kevin, and we're all enjoying it. And we hope you can continue to do it. And we hope you meet your goal of putting out that piece of content, at least one a day, every day for the rest of 2026, and continued success in your playing career and the Pro Tour and all the things that you're doing out there. It's just terrific. So appreciate it. And thank you for being on the podcast today. I really thank you.
Well, thank you so much. And thank you for all that you're doing for pickleball also. I
Wow.
really appreciate it.